Hello, it's Scott Manley here. Now, I'm still in Scotland right now because of funeral arrangements and things like that. But as I flew over, the developers of Star Citizen were having CitizenCon, and there has been a lot of questions, a lot of discussions. I get asked all the time: should I buy into the game? How much should I spend in the game? What's all this drama about? So I'm going to try and kind of roll this all up in the most balanced way possible. And that's actually really hard because there are kind of extreme viewpoints on both sides of things right now. And pretty much if I say one thing, they will have one side attacking me, and if I say another thing, the other side will attack me. And truthfully, the answer is probably in the middle, and anyone that attacks me is probably an extremist. So there, don't attack me or you'll get labeled as an extremist. Ha! No, seriously though, look, it is a huge project, right? It is, it's made $90 million in crowdfunding. Chris Roberts, the creator of Wing Commander, came out with a Kickstarter a few years ago. He was looking for $2 million originally, and the plan was, of course, that he would get another $20 million or so from investors, right? And they actually did collect some money directly from investors who would be doing royalty sharing. But moreover, the players that wanted this game, and I was one of those players that really want this game because it was going to be a modern, updated spaceship simulator with super high fidelity models, modern game engines, just cutting edge technology applied to this genre of spaceships, which I know and love. It was pitched as Squadron 42, which was essentially like the Wing Commander games. You were a fighter pilot, there was a big story, there'd be branching missions, there'd be cutscenes. This is all good. And then later, as the amount of money grew, they started pitching the idea of the persistent universe that would allow you afterwards to fly out on your own with whatever spaceship you could buy. Part of the Kickstarter was that they sold different tiers, and whatever tier you bought, you would get a bigger and better spaceship for the persistent universe that would follow. I'm not sure at which point it actually transitioned to be an MMO, but some people say that it was during the original Kickstarter, some people say that it wasn't clear from the original Kickstarter, but clearly the game that they were originally pitching was Squadron 42. So fast forward a bit, they get a bit of money, they keep selling new ships, they start creating really slick looking ads for these, and the game just starts to become this juggernaut, pulling in lots and lots of money. And they have these weekly 10 questions for the chairman, during which Chris Roberts would have a hard time turning down potential features, which I think is telling. Anyway, they released a couple of things. The hangar, where you can walk around and look at your digital spaceships. You can't actually fly them, except when you were able to hack the system and fly them. But later on, you got Arena Commander, where you could actually fly the spaceships against initially AI and flying Vandal fighters. And later on, you could fly them against other players. And later on, we got racing. And then the kind of release cycle kind of slowed down a bit. So there was a lot of work on the first-person shooter. The idea was that they would split up the development into different modules that they would be able to roll out kind of independently. So there would be a flying and spaceship thing, Arena Commander. Then there would be the first-person shooter where you could run around and take over space stations and capture big spaceships. Because, this is one of the things that we really want. We really want to do these boarding actions. We want to be involved in a giant fleet battle to capture a carrier and, board the spacecraft, fight our way in, or whatever, or pirate people and steal their loot and gather their tiers, let's say. But anyway, that was one of the modules, and that was being developed by a company called Ilphonic, who you maybe never heard of, but they had some experience with CryEngine. And, that just seemed to grind to a halt. We saw the first-person shooter at a bunch of different venues. We would see it being playable at at conventions, at what is it? Gamescom is a great example, CitizenCon, and it was promised during one particular roadmap presented at an event. It was promised for spring 2015. The social module was promised for spring 2015, and neither of those made that. On top of this, then, we started to get a bit of grumbling from a guy called Derek Smart. Now, Derek Smart, if you know about spaceship games, was a pretty big name. Derek Smart, uh, well, he would always create these grandiose plans, try to do everything, and with a very limited team, frequently fill in most of his bullet points on his ideas, but they would be buggy. They would require really huge manuals, which that works for a lot of people. A lot of people really like these super detailed manuals, and there was definitely a core group of people that really loved Derek Smart games. However, Derek Smart does have a little bit of an ego, and is also famous for getting involved in some of the largest flame wars in internet history. I don't want to get under. I don't want to. I don't want to get him mad. No, I don't want. I want to give him credit. He does take these big plans and he does go with them, and he stands by them, but he's also quite prone to criticize people. For example, allegedly, he said that German is not supported. The German version of Windows is not currently supported. Also, not full screen support for his latest game. There's kind of weird things like that, but yeah, you can't really have avoided him. Anyway, he was a backer. He paid $250 up front for Star Citizen. And hey, we're spaceship fans. We would love this game to come out as it was pitched. But he alleged that the game had essentially long since diverged from its original mandate of this Squadron 42 and shifted into this giant universe which was technologically not possible in the time frame and given the amount of money that they were offered. And that he then further alleged that, essentially Cloud Imperium, the Star Citizen developers, were, just trying to keep rolling out new spaceships so they could bring more money in, so they could possibly push themselves towards this goal, but they weren't 100% sure they could deliver it. That was an allegation. And I will point out, if you look at Derek Smart's original comment, he says he doesn't think that Chris Roberts set out to scam anyone. Let's be clear, right? Chris Roberts, while he has made these, Wing Commander games, and he also made Freelancer, he hasn't had the greatest reputation for delivering content on time. He, Freelancer was a long way through development. It spent a lot of money, and essentially the company ran out of money. Microsoft bought them. They replaced Chris Roberts as the CEO, and then a few months later, the game was finally released. And so there's a definite core of Star Citizen fans who are fans of Chris Roberts, and who they ask, what if he had had enough money to continue making that game to its original vision? Would it have been vastly superior? We don't know. So anyway, these people are quite likely to be people putting money in and giving Chris, a second chance to do something without Microsoft coming in and messing it up and making the game get released. Yeah, so Chris Roberts, I totally understand that he really likes these big plans, but hasn't necessarily had the best track record on delivering them on time. It happens. I honestly hope that a game does get delivered and developed to his level of plans and fidelity, because it would be amazing. I want what is in Chris's mind. I want that game. Anyway, Derek Smart also alleged that the game was being damaged by nepotism. In particular, Squadron 42 was being developed in large part by a company called Foundry 42, which was owned by Chris Roberts' brother, Aaron Roberts. Foundry 42, or at least the team behind it, they're also known for doing a lot of those fantastic Lego games. I love those games. I'm sorry, I'm a Lego nut. I really like those. So, they were actually a decent studio to start with. And, I don't have a problem with that particular claim that there was, some sort of family relationship, improper relationship. Because you know what? Whenever there was some question of something being done in time, we always heard that Foundry 42 was getting in there and they were fixing the model and making it better. They seem to be, out of all the studios that were working on Star Citizen, Foundry 42 seemed to be reliable at getting things done. And, totally, credit to them. So I don't have a problem. If he's hired his brother, if his brother is actually doing the best work on the game, that was not a problem to me. The other potential case of nepotism was Sandy Gardner, also known as Sandy Roberts. Yes, he's married to the VP of marketing. May not be the VP, it might be the chief of marketing. I'm not really quite sure. You know, she was wants to be an actress, and met him during his time making movies, which didn't have the greatest success with movies. But I will say that the whole opening segment, the whole opening segue or whatever of Lord of War is one of my favorite bits in movies. Just the whole following the bullet through everything there. Now, so again, well, yes, he has hired his wife, but they did keep it a secret. They kept it very secret, but it was kind of obvious because she appeared in early videos, of during the Kickstarter. Like, there's a whole line about, well, for the name of your families, or whatever, for the sake of your families and children, and it cuts to a picture of her and their daughters and things like that. Yeah. Again, I don't have a problem with that initially because, hey, if she's involved in marketing, it's hard to argue that they're doing a bad job with marketing when they're pulling in so much money for internet spaceships, for digital spaceships, many of which aren't even flyable. Clearly, she's not slacking off on her job by that particular standard. I don't know. So I didn't have a problem with that. I did completely agree that I thought that the project was perhaps starting to get away from Chris and he needed to refocus things. But I'm also a backer, and I was just you're trying to balance covering this game without getting too hung up on what might be at this time. Anyway, they gave Derek Smart his money back, and somehow he became the bogeyman for Star Citizen fans, which is really, really bizarre. I saw a comment the other day when I talked about Star Citizen. I just mentioned Star Citizen, and somebody said, well, we should see how much better Star Citizen is compared to Line of Defense, which is Derek Smart's game. And I have to say, if you're a Star Citizen fan and you want the game to be better than a Derek Smart game, then you're perhaps setting your goals a little low, given that they have $90 million worth of funding. Seriously, your goal should certainly be to be better than Derek Smart games, but it shouldn't, you shouldn't stop there. You got to go a lot further than that to really create a fantastic user-friendly experience. As I said, Derek Smart's games, for hardcore fans, they can be, pretty good, but for most people, the amount of impenetrable commands makes it inaccessible, and Star Citizen has really pushed itself to be accessible and easy. They use gamepads at the conventions and everything. They've done a pretty good job of mapping all the controls to gamepads, but oh boy, now where was I? Anyway, time rolls on. There was a really interesting moment earlier in the year when Disco Lando he's a fan that essentially had been making videos about the game, and he joined the developers, and he was doing he posted some picture or something of some work in progress, and in the background there was a URL which pointed to an Amazon web storage location. So people took that URL and they mucked around with it. They figured out there was a torrent file there, downloaded that, and basically downloaded all of the internal testing client. It was a lot bigger. This was a really interesting moment because a lot of people had been expressing some doubts as to how much work had been going on because things had been quiet. And then they found this and they showed out that there had been huge amounts of stuff that simply hadn't been published. And that actually restored faith to a certain extent for some people. It was quite an interesting moment, let's say. I'm not sure actually if that was before or after Derek Smart started getting involved. It's really hard not to talk about this without talking about Derek Smart. So anyway, as I flew over, they were having... Oh, wait. Before I flew over, we did get, in August, the social module kind of got released. So it wasn't a huge thing, but it was great that you could actually finally run around this city with a bunch of other people. You couldn't really do anything except chat and dance and do other emotes. But, it was a step in the right direction, and it showed at least that they could have people running around in the same location, which was pretty good. Also, with a bit of hacking, you can, in fact, fly spaceships through that level. I say hacking, God, jeez. People that don't understand how the word hack means... Listen, A hack is a mod which has not been packaged up, right? Once you package it up and make it easy for anyone, it becomes a mod, right? This was like changing files around. And that was like a dirty hack, right? God, people are so dumb. They don't know the etymology of the term. And seriously, moving forward, CitizenCon. The build up to CitizenCon was rather interesting. So CitizenCon was essentially the third event that they were holding, and it was going to be at Manchester Airport in a hangar which contains a real-life Concorde. People might remember that Elite Dangerous had a launch party with a Concorde involved as well. Kind of interesting, but, you know, Elite Dangerous is its own interesting side of these things. But there was going to be, of course, the team were going to fly over, a bunch of people were going to get tickets, and a few weeks before it, The Escapist wrote an article which contained a bunch of allegations by, supposedly contained allegations by employees, right? Basically allegations of money being misspent, whole sections of the game being scrapped and remade multiple times, you know, essentially gross mismanagement, which, you know, perhaps could be true, could be false, and I'm not really in a position to call this one way or another, but Escapist, well, what happened was Chris Roberts, who had been silent on the whole Derek Smart thing, finally wrote a letter to the chairman, or letter from the chairman, sorry, basically laying out, you know, what he saw was something of a grand conspiracy. It was really a really bad move. If you're CEO of a company that's made $90 million from fans, you should not be writing this kind of, you know, random accusation email. You could leave that to all your fans because they're going to do that all the time. Now it really was kind of weird. He kind of tried to associate this to Gamergate. He went and did some Twitter detective work and claimed that the author of the article was in fact an anonymous Twitter account, another Twitter account called Viper or something. I can't remember. You know, it was just really strange to read this. And I will say that was the point where I thought, you know, maybe whoever's in charge of marketing might not be qualified for this. You know, and as I said, doing a fantastic job raising money, and, you know, it's a great face for the fans, but no marketing pro would let that letter go out because it damages the company. I mean, I know there's fans, as soon as they saw that, it was like, oh, well, Chris is taking the gloves off and fighting back. No, if you're a CEO, you don't do this. When you've seen CEOs act like this, it is never good for their company. People, you know, when CEOs of companies that have stock traded do this kind of thing, right? This kind of ill-considered, you know, random sprawling response, their stock price just drops, right? This is bad news. And, oh, God, it didn't matter what he said. It was just the whole thing. And then there was further allegations from the other partner in the company about claims of legal action. And if you go over to Pope Hat, that's a blog that actually does legal analysis on stuff on the internet. They have a great deconstruction basically saying, you should not have posted this. This shows that you don't understand law, right? There was really, you know, God, that was disastrous for me in my eyes, right? It doesn't matter what's going on with the company. They just really seemed bad to me. Anyway, the Escapist kind of countered some of these claims. They stand by their claims. They claim that they have a number of employees that have... You can go and read the article, right? But again, you know, read it as an article that perhaps, you know, maybe it's true, maybe not all of it's true, maybe part of it is true, right? I don't think that all of it is untrue. I certainly don't think that... I think there is certainly truth in a number of the claims there, and I just don't know how many. So yeah, moving forward, CitizenCon, everybody coming over. Derek Smart continues to write off, and... Okay, Derek Smart is kind of like a conspiracy theorist. He'll take the available evidence and kind of mash it together into what matches his particular worldview. This is not how science is done. In science, you look at the available evidence and then you construct the simplest possible explanation that matches all these bits of evidence. Whereas I get the feeling, and I get the feeling that Derek Smart has his worldview and then he tries to fit all the evidence to that. and he would be a far more credible person if it wasn't for that particular behavior. And I will say that that was something that I saw in Chris's letter, right? Chris's letter from the chairman. There was seemed to be a whole bunch of, here's the evidence, and here I'm going to reconstruct it into our particular world. It was just one of the. It was they were both at the same level, right? Chris's letters and Derek Smart's letters. They both kind of had the same like. It's painful. It's painful to read some of these things. Okay, moving on anyway. Derek Smart actually claimed that he talked about how internal contacts and things like this, and he actually made a number of predictions for CitizenCon. And really interestingly, he claimed that he knew what was going to be, he knew something very secret, but he wasn't going to publish it because they would then make changes to make sure that the prediction wasn't true. So I, wanting to call his bluff, basically said, hey, you know, there is actually a way to make a revelation that is secret until, that you can verify, but is secret until after the fact. What you do is you basically make some statement in text and you encrypt it, and then you release the encryption key only after the event, right? So people can see the text up front, and then when the encryption comes through, you know, that actually verifies that the text is correct. And then a bunch of other people said, well, no, you really need us to hash this. And somehow they decided to do the worst thing possible. And this was, you know, goons doing this. And I will point out, as a goon, goons ruin everything. Yes, they hashed the name of the spaceship as the Vindicator, right? So they took the word Vindicator and did a SHA-256 on that, and then posted it to Reddit saying, this is what Derek Smart has predicted will be the name, or knows what the name of the next ship release will be. That was the title. I was like, oh my god, like, even if you couldn't decrypt even if you didn't guess that it was the Vindicator, guess what? Cloud Imperium could have just looked at that title and said, oh, let's just change it to anything, right? It wouldn't matter if the first post in that thread wasn't, oh, I just hashed the word Vindicator and that's what it came up. It was like, oh, no, he should have said, this is a prediction, here's the hash, right? And the prediction should have been like, the next spaceship to be released at CitizenCon will be the Vindicator, blah, 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 blah. That's just like, yeah. This is the kind of incompetence you sometimes deal with. It's hilarious. But yes, speaking of incompetence, when the Sabre was released at the convention for $170, and I will point out that Derek Smart predicted that it would be released at $175, if not more. So 170 is the most expensive they could have made it to make his prediction not true. At the convention, they showed it, and people went to the page to buy it. And somehow it was referred to as the Aegis potato. Several of the references to the spaceship in the text was the word potato, except for the big title and the big price tag. So, you call me a suspicious individual, but it does look like someone was rather fast with their search and replace and didn't notice the word potato all the way through the text. So maybe that was correct, maybe not, but we won't know because goons ruin everything. I'm a goon, but I'm not like extreme, you know, wanting things to fail, because nobody actually wants it to fail. Goons actually want the game to be a huge success. They want the persistent universe, so that when they find some whale that has bought an Idris frigate, they will be able to take swarms of Aurora and fly them into the bridge until that very expensive spaceship is destroyed by cheap spaceship. That's what goons do. I mean, sure, they're going to be, you know, they find the drama surrounding Derek Smart to be kind of interesting, but seriously. Okay, CitizenCon, what else? So CitizenCon comes around. First speech is by Sandy. Opening speech is just bizarre. It's almost like a resignation speech. And then there's a weird bit at the end where Aaron and Chris Aaron comes on with flowers, and then Chris says, you can stay, or whatever. So it's like this whole, it almost seemed like a resignation speech. I'm serious. That's how I would read it. And then, of course, no, she didn't resign or anything, which just makes everything seem really strange. I don't know how you would fire up the audience to be excited about a game. It's like they were firing up the audience to get sympathy for Sandy. Sure, I mean, she's going to be the butt of jokes forever. She's on the internet. Everybody in the internet gets insulted. I get insulted all the time, right? I don't let it get to me. Yeah, okay, and then we actually get to some cool tech demos and bits and pieces. We get to see the progress. So there's been some progress. They announced that the first-person shooter is essentially getting pushed out further, that we're going to see probably Arena Commander 2.0 with multi-crew. We have just, by the way, the last 24 hours or so, had the 1.3 release of Arena Commander and the persistent universe and everything, the social module. It's buggy, but it's in the test phase right now, so I'm presuming they will fix all the problems where people fall out of the geometry and things like that. That's just, that's just what happens with these. They post it to the test universe, and then they iterate on it until it's working. They did do a demo showing, running around spaceships and flying to some sort of space station, EVAing inside, bit of combat. There wasn't actually, while there was some gunfire scene on stations, there wasn't anybody killed, so I don't know how much of the first-person mechanics are in there. And truthfully, as I pointed out, it was originally for a Wing Commander style flying in spaceships game, so not having a first-person shooter module wasn't that, first-person shooter wasn't that important to me. Frankly, I'm not that interested in it, but, that's what they wanted, because people do want to have boarding, and to get boarding you're going to need first-person shooters. But it just seems like something that you could delay until after you've got the spaceships flying, doing all that awesome. They also announced, hey, we've got all the filming done, all the motion capture done for the story for Squadron 42. They basically rented out the Imaginarium for like 2 months, 60 days. The Imaginarium, if you don't know, is a motion capture studio run by Andy Serkis. Andy Serkis is, of course, famous for being Gollum and King Kong, and he is the star of motion capture. If you want to do motion capture, he's the guy you want, because he is he's really badass. He knows everything. He fundamentally, he makes this comment that actors come out of film school, to do kitchen sink dramas. They don't have a clue how to do mocap. That might explain why I felt that when they did, so they revealed the cast, and Gary Oldman, okay, it was really cool that Gary Oldman's one of my favourite actors, but I find it hard to get behind his performance here. Maybe he sounded way older than he actually is, and it might be because I think he's got some medical, he might have had some issues with his throat. But I don't think the performance was great. On the other hand, that could be because it's all in engine and they still need to, hook up all the musculature and everything like that. So I'm prepared to wait on this. They might do some editing. They might bring him back. Other people on the cast that they announced would be Mark Strong, again, thumbs up. Mark Hamill, who is really good voice actor. Yes, okay, he was in Star Wars, famous for Luke Skywalker, but since then he has actually come back and become really, really good voice actor. Interestingly enough, Sandy, VP of Marketer, wife of Chris, is billed above Gillian Anderson, who, Gillian Anderson, they misspelled her name. They only used one L. Yeah, attention to detail and all that. There's a whole bunch of other people on the list. But, they've obviously put together a serious cast. They've been doing motion capture. And I won't be surprised if that whole session at this studio with these actors probably cost them, $20 million. So, that's where the kind of money that Chris wants to make movies. Yeah, he might be making another movie. 10 hours of script in a 25 mission game or something like that. That's going to be a lot of cutscenes to watch, I have to say. Hopefully you don't need to watch them all. I don't know. It's really hard to judge at this point. So I'm trying to find the positive parts here. And, what really struck me in the last few days is I've seen some internal messages that were leaked that seem to imply that they are really refocusing on getting Squadron 42 out. They've now released the Squadron 42 pre-order package, which is actually the same as the Arena Commander package as far as I can tell at this time, but maybe something changes in the future. That's all well and good. They seem to be refocusing development on making sure Squadron 42 gets out, which would be good. They're seem to be moving people around, and there's some accusations that they're closing some studios. I certainly am not privy to that information, and I'm not sure whether it's a good or bad thing. But yeah, so that seems to be what's going on there. They did launch Vindicator. Sorry, the not the Vindicator, the Saber, which is another space superiority fighter from Aegis. It's of course better than all the other spaceships that you've previously been able to buy. It's going to be better than everyone that had Super Hornets and were able to blast around killing all the other players up until now. Of course, it's not in the game at this time. Yeah, Derek Smart was last seen starting to draw tenuous links between Aaron Roberts and the Swedish mafia. Not the Swedish house mafia, the Swedish mafia and Gizmondo and other crazy things. Again, David, sorry, Derek. Yeah, Derek does have this habit of trying to link the evidence together to fit his story. So maybe there's truth, but it's going to be an interesting read, but don't necessarily believe every single word is true. I'm just hoping that ultimately they get everything back on track and make something, and they do get it released, because it would be great. The spaceship do look fantastic, except for the views from the cockpit. I don't quite understand why they put so much stuff in the view makes it so hard to see out of a spaceship, They will hopefully not run out of money anytime soon. And here's the thing, right? If you are a company that's made a bunch of revenue, you can get loans, right? You can get essentially loans from banks to help you finish things like that. So it's not like if they spend all the $90 million in the next year, and it's possible because, developing games is expensive. You're paying a bunch of money to developers, and then you have to give them hardware and medical insurance and all these other things. So I would not be surprised if they're blowing through $30 to $40 million a year at, roughly. I'm just totally guessing, and there's other people that are doing real numbers on this and claim to know more than me. And they have all sorts of different arguments on this. So there is a referral code system that was also launched so that, you can get your friends involved. And I've decided I'm not doing it because I don't want to be referring people at this point to a game that has some questions as to how likely it is to be developed. I still think it's going to come out. I think it's going to come out, and it's really a question of what gets cut, and to be fair, let's be clear, Chris Roberts has promised so much stuff that they're going to cut stuff. People are taking some of his random comments as gospel as to what's going to be in it. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think that there's going to be some people who are quite happy saying, let's drop this particular feature that was promised by Chris on a whim while answering a question of a fan at a live event. Chris, yes, he loves his vision. I want the vision in his head. That's what I want as a game, but his project management may not be the best, and I hope that they can keep the project managers online for this. Okay, well, that's it for now. I thought this was going to be like a 10-minute video. So the question is, should you back Star Citizen? If you're a hardcore fan and you want to, Chris Roberts, back it at the cheap level. Don't buy any of the fancy spaceships. $45 is all you need to spend at this time if you want to get access to the game. I'm not sure it's for everyone. It does need a pretty hefty piece of hardware to run it. Yeah, I'm not doing the referral code thing, I don't think. It would seem wrong, right? If you do back it, don't upgrade your ships or anything like that. That's just a trap that's too easy to get into. And then I see stories of people that have, basically spent their kids' college fund on Star Citizen and had a divorce as a result. I mean, it's like, we don't want those kind of stories. It's just bad news for crowdfunding in general. I mean, ultimately, this is what I'm really concerned about, is that if Star Citizen did go south, it would be like a disaster for crowdfunding in general. It would be a disaster for spaceship games. But hey, Elite is doing their thing, even if they're charging quite a lot for expansions, which, again, I don't have a problem with them doing this once a year. But if they're gonna nickel and dime you for DLC every few months, like some games do, then hey, no, don't do that. So yeah, Star Citizen. Hopefully we get something, and try to find the point in the middle, right? There's extreme people on one side, there's extreme people on the other, and the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, right? I'm Scott Manley. Fly safe.